All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. We are going to shift the conversation to a collegiate sport, football, that is. Talk Big Ten scheduling. Some people think that some hands that were dealt, not necessarily fair, not ones that were even across the board. We'll talk to Scott Docterman about it here in just a moment. First, Greg, tell our listeners about Polar Bear Services.
Well, Wes and the guys have been coming and taking care of me for a long time. Very, very grateful to the experience I have every single time I make the call to Polar Bear Services. And we know that the cold weather's been rolling, the warm weather is coming, things are looking pretty good here, but we're probably going to have some storms coming up as well. They can do a whole home generator install, so you don't have to worry about your home if the power goes out. I've been using them for years. They can do system tune-ups on your HVAC. They can do duct cleaning, repair, new installations. They really help you out in a lot of ways. Electrical, plumbing, small appliance. They can literally do anything. So anything that goes wrong in my house, the first phone call I make is always to Polar Bear Services. Remember, if you have a problem with your electrical, plumbing, heater, air, just pick up the phone and call the Bear. It's 205-497-BEAR. It's 497-BEAR.
Scott Docterman of The Athletic joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline. Follow him on Twitter at Scott Docterman. Knows the Big Ten well. And, Scott, I wanted to bring you in to have this discussion. We haven't spent a lot of time necessarily on the schedules since they had been released. I know a lot of people immediately looked at that Ohio State schedule and said the deck has been stacked against the Buckeyes. Did you see a big differential between what the Buckeyes are going to face maybe versus what the rest of the league will face this upcoming season?
100%. It's the most difficult schedule in Big Ten history. And I'm not being hyperbolic with that. But when you look at the combined record of their 9 opponents coming up, in last season, they were 51-30. They have a stretch where they're playing Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, USC, Oregon, and Michigan. I mean, you're talking about teams that all won at least 9 games last year. That is as difficult of a run as you'll ever find. And I think a lot of people probably nationally will just kind of laugh it off or look at it differently. And, well, it's just Ohio State. But that's asking a lot out of a team. When you're talking about some of the road trips, I mean, going to Iowa City, and it's been 9 years, but Iowa City's not a real easy place to play, as we've seen in the past. Indiana, national championship. I mean, that's just they got dealt as difficult of a hand as probably I've ever seen. So, which also draws into the question of, let's say that there's God forbid there's an injury issue at Ohio State and they go 9-3. They could still be one of the best, if not the best 9-3 team we've ever seen, and maybe not get in the playoff despite seeing this incredible schedule. So, but when you have 18 teams in a league, sometimes you're going to roll the dice and you're not going to go. And let's face it, 3 or 4 years ago, we're not saying that Illinois and Indiana is going to be anything special on anybody's schedule. But that being said, based on how those teams performed last year, this is the most difficult schedule I've ever seen.
It is extremely difficult. Is that more the product of where things are going in the Big Ten? Because it does feel like the gap in challenging schedules, if you will, between Wisconsin, for example, who has, I think, the most manageable schedule in the Big Ten. Penn State's close, and Ohio State is absurd. I mean, that's a massive gap. Is there any way to maybe resolve the gap in difficulty?
Not really. And that's part of the problem, because you look this year, the season that just ended up, Wisconsin by far had the most difficult schedule in the Big Ten, if not in the entire country. Their month of October consisted of Michigan, Iowa, Oregon, and Ohio State. That was about as, and then later on they were playing, they beat Illinois, but they played Indiana. They also played Alabama in a non-conference game. So it was a really grind for them. But then coming up this year, the combined record of those teams is 28-53. And you look at the 3 teams that they're playing that are probably, better than most would be, Penn State, which was 7-6. And then they also play USC and at Iowa. That's really about it for Wisconsin. And I think this is a product of going to 18 teams, of having, they try to make sure that everybody plays everybody twice over a 5-year period. And some years you're just going to have a massive challenge when it comes to game by game, and other years you're going to have ones where it just kind of works out this way, and it's unfortunate, and I guess suppose you could do it different ways, which would be redraw it after every year, but I don't think anybody wants to do that, and then you could also do things like divisions, which won't happen again. So it's really cyclical, and I think also Penn State is in that situation too, where they miss Ohio State. But their schedule is pretty light for the most part. I think there's three teams that won 9 games last year on their schedule. They play USC at home, they go to Michigan, and they go to Washington. And outside of that, I mean, even though it's a new coach and Matt Campbell, his first year, he's got a lot of veteran players he brought with him. But you look at that and you say, Penn State should be a minimum 9-3. And if Ohio State and Penn State both go 9-3, 9-3s are not built the same, and that'd be the same situation here.
Scott Docterman, national college football writer for The Athletic, joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline, talking Big Ten schedules and maybe what's upcoming this season. It's gotten more difficult than ever, Scott, to project what teams will be, specifically with the coaching carousel and what that is now and how deep it seems to run each and every year. You brought up one change in the Big Ten. There are multiple head coaching changes. Who do you feel like has the most success, or maybe best chance to have the most success year one as a Big Ten head coach at a new school?
I would start with Penn State. Last year, 5 out of their 6 losses all came by 1 score or less. I mean, they were really close. And the Oregon game was, double overtime. Going to Iowa, they lost by a point. The ones that were kind of embarrassing hiccups for them were at UCLA and Northwestern, which ultimately cost James Franklin his job. But that team played hard. And really, other than the Ohio State game, it was right there with just about everybody. And I think, you still have kind of the guts of that roster. And then Matt Campbell brought a lot of really talented players from Iowa State. I mean, and that's been a very successful program. It was 8-4 this year, but had a tremendous amount of injuries. The year before, it won 11 games. And I think you throw that on there with, a very manageable schedule. There's no major non-conference opponent. I think Penn State could be in a position to where it competes for a playoff spot in year one, because again, the way that their schedule lines up, the veterans that they bring with them that are already there on campus, and Matt Campbell is an outstanding coach. So I really look for him to be a guy that can take that team, right off the bat. Now, a few others that I think Michigan State has a chance to bounce back. I'm not saying they're going to be in that category, but I think a team that can go from 4-8 to 7-5, 8-4 possibly. I like Pat Fitzgerald. He's always been a really good coach. Now he has a little more talent. He assembled a really good staff around him. I think they've got a chance, even though they really had a lot of portal hits, and that one, it's harder to predict because you don't know how all the newcomers will perform. But I think with him, building something, I think that they could flip. And that's probably the next one, I would say. And then UCLA is the wild card because they haven't been very good, but can, Bob Chesney step in there and turn it around? And it's kind of hard. You can't really poo-poo any of these anymore because after what Indiana did, it's like, well, I'm not going to just say that they'll never have a chance to succeed because I thought Indiana was in that category. And of course, Indiana turned out to be one of the best stories in college football history.
Yeah, it's changed a lot, and continuity and understanding your personnel is very, very helpful. SC is a team that I'm fascinated by this year. I think the hire of Gary Patterson is interesting on defense. They bring back everybody along the O-line. I love their quarterback. I think they got a 1-2 punch at running back that can go. Not ever going to be concerned with wideouts or weapons because it's a Lincoln Riley offense. They're going to have them. They're going to have many of them, probably too many to keep them all happy. Mm-hmm. So when you look at SC this year, yes, challenging schedule, and some real challenging road trips, bunch of tough games on the road. But I still look at this team, and I think they can get there. Like, they can be a really dangerous team if they can knock off a couple teams at home. So how optimistic should we be about the Trojans?
I think you should look at them the same way we just did, which is, they won 9 games. They went 9-4, and you just think, okay, if they can just mount a little bit better defense, if they can get some stops in key moments, that this team could be right there. And I think we'll know right away. First three games in the Big Ten schedule, well, first three out of the first four, will tell you if this team is a playoff contender or if they're a Alamo Bowl kind of contending team. And that is, first they go to Rutgers, which is a long trip, but then they come back home, Oregon and Washington, and then at Penn State. Those are really challenging games right away, as we know. And I think if they can manage that, it's easy to play this fantasy football and say 3-1, after the first four. But if they can get to that point, I think you've got a team that's really capable of competing, for the upper quartile of the Big Ten, which puts them right in the playoff discussion, kind of like the way they were last year. But they were atrocious on third down a year ago. They allowed 8 touchdown passes on third down, which was 123rd in the country. They, the 22 touchdowns overall through the air, high passing completion percentage. So if Gary Patterson can go in and really alter that defense, and I thought, Lynn did a really nice job, as a defensive coordinator, elevating him from one of the absolute worst to a decent defense. But I think if Gary Patterson can turn that unit around and into being a pretty good unit, that yes, I think USC is more than capable with, Mahava at quarterback and whoever they end up, having at receiver, because as we know, Lane and Lemon were absolute studs at wide receiver for USC. But I think if they can bring those guys, if they can have the receivers to match, that I think, yes, USC has a very good chance of ending up in the playoff.
Visiting with Scott Docterman on the Higginbotham Hotline. He writes for The Athletic, covers college football nationally, but we're focusing on Big Ten here today. I mentioned the difficulty in projecting what a team will be. More transfer help on the way for Indiana, but the culture seems to be set. The blueprint seems to be in place. How do we know what really to expect from a team that's going to have so many new pieces filling in this upcoming season?
That's going to be another interesting wild card to this, because with Indiana, just the most incredible story we've ever seen in college sports over the last 2 years. But Kurt Signetti had a blueprint, and he was able to bring kind of that foundation with him of players that he knew that were very talented, that were overlooked, and plugged in and put guys in who could play right away and play hard, and then supplement it this last year with a Heisman Trophy winner and some elite receivers. Well, the foundation of that is all going to the NFL. I mean, Fernando Mendoza will be the number 1 overall pick. Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper will be in the NFL, if probably second-day picks. And so you're kind of starting over there, with Hoover at quarterback. And I think that's something that it's not necessarily an unknown, because you know that Signetti wins. He told us that, and he does it. They do have still the guts of a pretty decent roster, but can they get back to double-digit wins? Can they be a playoff team? And I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the next level challenge for them is, you had that instant infusion of all those really good athletes that he knew that set the culture, that set the tone, that really elevated that level of play. Do they have the next level? And now the portal was really kind to them. They were able to get a lot of really good pieces. I would not rule them out ever now after what I've seen the last 2 years, but they've and their schedule is not overly difficult, but they've got, mid-season stretch where they go to Nebraska, they've got Ohio State, at Michigan, later on, USC and Washington back to back. That's going to be, it's going to be challenging. And if they go 9-3, that's actually a pretty good season, all things being considered. But, how do people interpret it based on what we saw last year? That's going to remains to be seen.
Scott, we appreciate the time. Great stuff. Thanks for hanging out with us, catching us up on some Big Ten scheduling. We'll do it again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
There you go. Scott Docterman on Big Ten schedules. Higginbotham Hotline is where he joined us and where you can be a part. Following up on that, 800-239-9569. We're going to take a little bit of a further look of who has some of the tougher roads, some of the lighter roads in the Big Ten, schools that we think may be able to bounce back from what they were a season ago because of what they've added through the portal. We'll discuss multiple avenues of what the Big Ten may look like, may be, in our next segment. First, I'll tell you about the Gusty Ghouls Group. If you guys are looking to get into a new home, similar to what a couple teams did in the Big Ten a few years ago, you got to go to GustyGoolsGroup.com, see what they can do for you right now. Maybe just see what they can get for your home. Button at the top right-hand corner of the page, smash that button, very little information. They'll tell you what they think they can get for your home right now. 205-542-1996. Call the Gusty Goolz Group today, brokered by eXp Realty. Or you can just Google them. You'll see over 855-star Google reviews. The Gusty Goolz Group has served more than 3,000 home buyers and sellers in the greater Birmingham area. Just one of the many reasons that they are dedicated and suited to help you get rid of your home and get into a new home. So go to GustyGoolzGroup.com today. Call 205-542-1996 and start packing. Teams we like, teams we have question marks about in the Big Ten. Next, right here on Jocks. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Looking through some of these Big Ten schedules, it is wild, the difference. Now, part of this will be the old Georgia conversation, Greg, here at 8:19, Wednesday, February 11th. And that is that a lot of the Big Ten schedules are not going to be as tough as Ohio State's because they don't
play Ohio State.
Right. And a lot of these teams do. But you look at Wisconsin.
Dude.
You mentioned maybe the most manageable. To miss Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, and Indiana?
Think about that. The four toughest games traditionally, and you avoid all four.
You could literally be talking about the only ranked conference opponent that they play being USC.
Yes. And they do play Notre Dame in the non-con at Lambeau. So let's just say they get Notre Dame. That game's early, by the way. Notre Dame, for whatever reason, has struggled in weeks 1 and week 2 the last couple of years. Like, yes, they beat A&M, but collectively in the weeks 1 and 2.
Lost to Northern Illinois earlier a couple years ago.
Correct. In weeks 1 and 2, they are 1 and 3 the last 2 seasons. So if for whatever reason Notre Dame's a slow starting football team, let's say Wisconsin somehow magically gets that game. I don't think it's likely, but just
okay, they steal it.
Let's say they steal it. Notre Dame turns it over 4 times. They lose the game by 2. Look at Wisconsin's possible record. Seriously.
Just at what they could be after that game and how they could potentially run through it for the rest of the year.
Now, a lot of this depends on, do they have a quarterback, and what does the offense look like? Because they are obviously adjusting their identity. But
for those that don't know, it goes Western Illinois, so they'll get the Leathernecks.
I like their chance
Week
there.
2, Eastern Michigan would be next. Then you're at Penn State. That's a
tough game.
80% new roster with a new head coach. Now they all know one another, so probably still going to be.
I would lean Penn State in that game.
Sure. Michigan State next, another new head coach in the league, as Pat Fitzgerald taking over.
Love Pat Fitzgerald, but maybe it takes it's not a lock that it's a year 1, everything's great
week
situation.
Off, and then you get UCLA, most likely the worst team in the league.
Why sit down on UCLA?
Oh, just they haven't been great recently, and they have.
If you hate UCLA, just tell us.
Bob Chesney taking over. Then you get USC, but you're at Iowa next, which always a tough place to play, specifically on Halloween later in the year. Rutgers, at Maryland, at Purdue, Minnesota. Doesn't feel daunting.
No.
Does not feel daunting, which is great news for Luke Fickell, because hot seat probably knocking there. Penn State would come in next. They don't play Indiana, Ohio State, or Oregon. Now, they do get USC, but they get them at home. And this will be another one, I think, right there in line with Wisconsin, Greg, that you look at and say, talk about one that you caught some breaks.
Yeah.
Marshall, at Temple, Buffalo. By the way, how does Temple keep getting these teams to come play them at home in the non-con? Oklahoma was there last year. Marshall, at Temple, Buffalo, Wisconsin, at Northwestern. That's actually a Ryan Field. So don't have to play at the rig anymore. USC at Michigan, week off. Purdue at Washington, Minnesota, Rutgers at Maryland. Should be bowl eligible.
Should be.
Don't think that many people would push back on that. Now, is this going to cloud the difference in what people think of Illinois maybe earlier in the year, later in the year, with what they faced this season? Because it doesn't feel like a very daunting task for the Illini either. If you're looking at level of difficulty, Illinois opens up with UAB, new head coach. They get Duke, just lost their quarterback. Southern Illinois, at Ohio State, tough. No one's going to deny that. Purdue at Michigan State, week off. Oregon. Okay, so you got Ohio State and Oregon, difficult. At Maryland, Nebraska, at UCLA, Iowa at home, at Northwestern. Bielema should be able to stack up some wins against that one.
Should be.
With another good quarterback coming in, some difficult pieces to replace up front on both sides of the ball, but that should be one that you look at and say, yeah, you should be able to put some wins together against that schedule.
Should be. Should feel pretty good about it.
So you go to the flip side. We already mentioned Ohio State. Would you say that Ohio State is still Ohio State, so they should be able to manage a lot of that? Maybe the most, I don't want to say difficult hand dealt, but something along those lines would be Northwestern. And a lot of that has to do with what Northwestern is.
I think Northwestern's got probably one of the most brutal schedules there is.
Now, South Dakota State to open it up. Then you take a week off. Colorado, at Indiana, Penn State, Ball State, at Michigan State, Rutgers, at Oregon, Iowa, at Ohio State. Then you go to Minnesota, and then you get Illinois to close it out. That is nasty for Northwestern. Road games against the defending national champions. Road games against 2 other teams in the college football playoff, Ohio State and Oregon. And then you also have to go to Minnesota on November 21st, by the way. Feels comfortable.
Not where you want to be.
Yeah, throw in a little road game against Michigan State, throw in Colorado and Illinois on the schedule. That is brutal for Northwestern.
Very.
Bowl eligible, yes or no right now?
No. Their schedule's a beast.
Oregon did not get dealt an easy hand by any stretch of the imagination. You open up with Boise, then you're at Oklahoma State, which, similar to what we talked about with Penn State, yeah, a new coaching staff, but a lot of the same pieces coming with the new coaching staff. So Eric Morris is going to have his quarterback and Drew Mestemaker and other pieces of that offense coming in.
There's a pretty big gap between the two rosters, regardless. I mean, and
yes,
let's keep in mind, I mean, North Texas, yes, a lot of continuity coming back. Oregon's a different animal. They should be able to handle it, but
no doubt,
for whatever reason, if that game becomes tight, I think that Oregon will be just fine.
But a little further ahead of schedule than first-year head coach in his second game, probably than most.
Yes.
You would think.
Correct.
Portland State, they get the Vikings week 3. Then they're at USC. Week off, they get UCLA at home. Nebraska at home. At Illinois. Northwestern. At Ohio State. Michigan. At Michigan State. And then Washington. There's a lot of back and forth, I feel like, in that schedule.
A whole lot.
So
I think
travel is going to be something I'd imagine
that's the other thing
Dan Lanning is asked about and probably references later in the season.
That's the thing that you got to acknowledge when dealing with the Big Ten. Look, some teams travel, like USC's travel schedule, and we've talked about this. I know you think it's a reflection on what we think of USC and Lincoln Riley specifically. I just think when you have to travel 15,000 miles in conference, that's a beast. I mean, just to travel to Rutgers and back, you're talking about 5,500 miles, 6,000 miles thereabouts round trip. That's a beast now.
Yeah.
So, and like that thing takes its toll. You go travel, play that game, you're back at 5 a.m, and it disrupts your Sunday. And then next thing you know, it's, you know, your Sunday leads into a Monday practice that's less than stellar, and now you're a day behind. It's just, it takes its toll. And I don't disagree with you. Like, I think some teams are more capable of handling it. Like, if Utah had to travel a 3,000-mile road trip, I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over it. But SC, you know, kind of a team that operates with ruthless offensive efficiency, could they be a little off potentially? Sure. Like, they went and played a 9 a.m. game against Illinois last year and looked awful. Granted, half the team had the flu, but they didn't look good.
Right.
That was an external circumstance. They also played the week before until 2 o'clock in the morning Eastern time when they played against Michigan State at home with an 11 a.m. Eastern time kickoff. Like, I think there's just, in the Big Ten, you got to deal with weird quirks in the schedule that are unique because they didn't do a great job of, while they did a great job of spanning coast to coast, they didn't do a great job of kind of making travel more manageable for their rosters.
Absolutely. So the travel is going to be a part of it, and a lot of that has to do with just the footprint of the conference. Now, it's going to be a regular portion of the discussion, but it does feel like the scheduling differential in the Big Ten a little bit different than some of the other leagues we've seen.
Don't disagree.
Now, we
with
always
that
have the one, like Missouri last year in the SEC. We have one or two that we look at and say, yeah, it's just that's different, you know. And then we've talked about South Carolina, Arkansas. It feels like the last, 5-6 years where it's just like, goodness gracious, what they have to go up against. Now, part of that is they're not Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and having to play themselves. And some of those teams are falling on their schedule. So, therefore, it's a little bit more difficult. But, yeah, I can see the difference of what some of these are and why people would look at them in different ways.
When I look at some of the Big Ten teams, I want your opinion on this. We've talked for a while about what wins in the Big Ten. We know that the last couple of years, Indiana won with a level of physicality. We've seen Michigan win with a level of physicality. We've seen Ohio State win with a level of physicality. Do you believe that still in the Big Ten, the most physical team is the team that will be standing at the end?
Most likely, yes.
Who is that team going to be?
The most physical team in the Big Ten. Ohio State is the first one that comes to mind, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't think it couldn't be Indiana again, but not all pieces of that team are proven right now. It's still going to, it's like last year. There are parts of that team that are going to be coming in that we feel like probably could allow them to be that again. Were they the most physical team in your mind last year? More so than Iowa?
Yeah.
I think it's, but I don't think it's it's not a wide gap.
It can't be physical in a phone booth. It has to be physical with the ability to win in several different ways. And Iowa almost went 11-1 last year. I mean, that was a sneaky one that kind of flew under the radar nationally. That was a really sneaky good football team that no one really talked about because they weren't sexy and they didn't always look great. And the offense had their challenges throwing the football per usual. But that was a sneaky good football team last year that could have beaten a lot of good teams and gave Indiana all they wanted. Probably played Indiana better than anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of maybe Miami and maybe a game or two here or there.
Sure.
So all things considered, like, yeah, I think when I look at the Big Ten, it's pretty easy for me to determine what's going to win the league. To me, it is always going to be about physicality. And I'll tell you a team that I think is getting slept on drastically because I know they're going to be crazy physical this year.
All right, so hold on to that team, and we're going to talk about them on the other side next, right here on Jocks. Greg McElroy says he has one Big Ten team that will stand out from the rest for one particular reason that he also thinks is going to be the main factor in winning that league next year. It's 8:35 Wednesday, February 11th, right here on Jocks. Don't forget you can listen online, jocksfm.com. You can grab the app in your app store, iPhone, Android, download that for free. Listen on the go. That app will take you to the podcast of interviews, segments of the show. Also direct you to the YouTube page. Just search Jocks945. You can watch live on YouTube each and every day. Or tell your home smart speaker to enable the Jock skill.
Bill Smith Buick GMC is the GMC Dealer of the Year, the national champion of GMC dealers. They've won it 8 times. They won it 5 years in a row, and they sell more vehicles than anyone in the entire Southeast. A pretty good place to start. They sell by volume. They have so many cars going out the door that they can market down more than anyone else. Like a GMC Sierra 2026 1500 Denali Ultimate. Really beautiful vehicle, beautiful truck, luxurious trim level. 87,390 is what you'd pay elsewhere. At Bill Smith, you get it for just under $73,000 at $72,890. It's deals like that keep people coming back. That's $14,500 off the sticker price. And that's how you become Dealer of the Year. That's how you sell more vehicles than anyone in the entire Southeast. And that's how you continue to stay atop the list of dealerships according to General Motors. So go take the short route to Coleman, I-65, exit 310, Highway 31. You can also shop online, have it delivered right to your driveway at Bill Smith Buick, GMC.com.
All right, so the Big Ten, you feel like you have a team that you have a beat on that has a certain aspect to them returning next year that's going to give them a huge advantage as far as winning this league. Who is said team?
Michigan.
Oh.
Michigan.
Quarterback with experience.
Quarterback with experience, second-year jump. Who, by the way, showed some flashes last year.
Did some good things.
Did some good things. There was some good for a freshman, solid year. Like, not great. A lot of mistakes, solid nonetheless. How do we feel about their coaching situation? Huge upgrade?
Better.
Yes. Massive upgrade?
Upgrade. Big upgrade.
Massive.
The only reason I might not go massive is that, well, I don't know what I don't know how things look behind the scenes, but you did have some staff continuity, and I think there's value in that.
There is value in that. I liked some of their position coaches. I liked their OC. Like, there are things to like.
But this is still new.
It's Kyle Whittingham.
He's great.
He's a Hall of Famer.
But it's still new, and that
Hall of Famer.
Sometimes comes with difficulties.
Hall of Famer.
Okay.
You walk in with skins on the wall, though, like Kyle Whittingham has. It's not going to take a lot for a lot of those guys to get on board. And if there's one thing I know, some of the pieces he brought with him, those guys are tone setters. Tone setters. You get a couple tone setters immediately in that locker room, help establish that culture that's been created at Utah for a very long time. Who has done a better job over the last 2 decades at a mid-level program historically than what we've seen from Kyle Whittingham at Utah?
Who? Nobody?
Is it close?
No.
What does a mid-level coach now do, or a guy that has dominated with a mid-level program do now with a high-octane blue blood and deep pockets?
Has a good chance to get it going.
I don't think it's going to take long. And I think they're going to be super physical. I love their offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, how he is going to create advantages in the run game, how he's going to create advantages with a mobile quarterback. I mean, he's done an amazing job the last couple of years calling plays. So pretty big coup to bring him naturally. And also his advancement and allowing quarterbacks to play above where they've played in the past is pretty significant. I think Bryce Underwood's poised for a pretty big year. They got a lot of juice at wide receiver.
I like their receivers.
A lot of juice at wide receiver. I don't know how I feel about the O-line, but it's Michigan. How bad can it be?
You should at least have some bodies in place.
They should be in good shape. And then defensively, you bring a couple guys from Utah, and they're going to be super disruptive. You know it's going to be a disruptive defense.
Yes.
So pretty optimistic is probably underselling it. I don't know if they're going to go and rip and, win the Big Ten. Let's be real. I don't know if I can go that far. But I can feel confident in saying this is a group that will be in every game. And it would not surprise me if at season's end, we're talking about this team as a possible college football sleeper.
Oh, okay.
I really like them.
there are a lot of pieces to like, and part of that is because of I think a lot of what you're saying is just how they've been built over the years, and so even the leftovers from that give you some things to feel good about, as you mentioned on the offensive line. Now some are going to be out, like Ty Haywood is transferring into Alabama, so you have some pieces that may have been there that are going to be gone. Ben Roebuck is transferring out to, I think, Western Michigan. So you have some offensive linemen that are leaving the program.
Wait, what?
Well, I'm just saying you have some guys that have been there that are leaving. I mean, even other like the Jamie French kid, the wide receiver, coming in from Texas, one that you feel like I'm talking about guys that have not proven themselves, but because of where they were brought in and what they played, might have a chance to be pretty good wherever they go. You're an offensive lineman signed by Michigan the last 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
You got a chance.
Definitely.
You're a wide receiver signed by Texas the last few years. You probably got a chance.
Yes.
So the interchange of guys through the portal, in and back out of the portal, I think it's about a wash. I don't look at what what they lost and say they're not going to be able to replace it, and vice versa. Some of what they brought in, I think, is going to be a big help. And then I think too, like you just said, the culture that had been established at Utah for so long, what Kyle Whittingham is, what he stands for, it's not going to be too far off from what they have been and have wanted to be.
For sure.
But I do think they'll bring a little extra creativity with the playbook, which has been needed for quite some time. I mean, how many Michigan games have we watched, talked about here on Mondays, and said, I mean, could you not have opened it up just a little bit? Could you not find a little more creativity? I mean, outside of
just a wee bit,
outside of the screen game last year, there wasn't a lot to look at and say, man, love how they called that, handled that, managed that, love what they did there. It just wasn't there.
A little hamstrung with a young quarterback.
That's fair, but also you felt like you could have got a little more creative with pocket movement, quarterback run. Didn't even do a ton of that last year.
Well, maybe the quarterback had something to do with that. Maybe he's like, I don't really want to do that.
Is it in his contract?
I have no idea, but I'm
saying?
just saying, like, sometimes if they don't use quarterback run, when it seems like that's something obvious that they should utilize, there might be something more to the story. I'm not suggesting that. I don't know. All I'm saying is maybe there's more to the story there.
Yeah, and that's fair. Maybe could be. The schedule, as you bring them up, Western Michigan at home, and then Oklahoma week 2. They get the return game there in Ann Arbor. UTEP, Iowa early at home. At Minnesota, take a week off. Then you get Penn State. Then you get Indiana, at Rutgers, Michigan State, at Oregon, UCLA, at Ohio State. It is not simple. It is not one that you look at and say, yes, the wins will be stacked. At least I don't see that. I don't know if you see it any differently, but that's a tough schedule.
Very.
And specifically with like what you talked about, a still younger quarterback, new offensive coordinator.
Yes.
And early in the season, you're going up against Oklahoma's defense. You're going up against Iowa's defense.
Yeah, you could get popped early.
Yeah.
And that might be hard to bounce back from.
At Ohio State and at Oregon, 2 of the last 3 weeks of the season. Don't love that.
Don't
love that. I think you'll be fine with UCLA coming to your place November 21st in between those two
games. Man, you are
games.
so down on UCLA.
I just feel like I'm a realist, but I feel like you'll be okay there.
Kenny Bob Chesney's going to get it dialed.
Probably, but November in Michigan, first-year coach at UCLA, I'll take the Wolverines.
Fair.
Don't even need to see the rosters.
Fair.
I'll take Michigan.
Love that.
Also throw in a road trip at Rutgers on October the 31st, heading into the final month of the season. So, and that comes off Penn State and Indiana in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
It's not a light schedule at all.
Not at all.
And they put together 8-9 wins. I think that'd be a heck of a season year one.
Fair enough. But help me out with this. If you look at the mentality and the way they play and the physicality that they used at Utah, assuming that can all carry over with slightly better personnel, how dangerous do they become? I agree with you. It's year one. There's challenges. There's nuance. There's changes. There's adjustments. There's a new off-season program. Like all this other stuff. I get all that. I understand that it's going to be different. And maybe there's some growing pains as a result of that. But tell me, if everything hits, what's the ceiling?
I think the ceiling could be high because let's just go through some of what we went through to discuss how difficult the schedule is. Oklahoma, is the offensive line going to work? We don't know. Didn't work last year.
Feel pretty good about Oklahoma, though. But are we chasing ghosts there? Possibly.
No, I don't think so because it hasn't been proven that it's going to be good, much less decent or okay or sustainable. It wasn't even good last year for the majority of the season. Iowa.
I like Iowa this year.
I think they're going to be solid. But,
how much do they lose along the O-line?
2 starters, I believe.
Okay.
But you're going to slide a guard down the center. They'll be fine there. They're not taking a step back.
All you got to do is just learn how to snap.
That's the only thing.
How
I'm
hard
sure
is
he's
that?
never done it. Probably center quarterback exchange every day before practice. He probably never did that.
How hard is that?
Never got reps.
Just
there.
snap the ball.
Penn State, complete makeover.
I love Penn State this
Indiana, new quarterback.
Am I crazy to love Penn State this year?
Love, probably. Yeah.
Well, not love. Love's probably a bit of a reach, but they're not going 6-6.
No, not against that
7-6.
schedule, especially. Indiana, new quarterback, a lot of leadership gone, a lot of playmakers gone from that team. Heisman Trophy winning quarterback gone. They'll be different. I think they're still going to be a really good football team, but they'll be different. Oregon, now, yeah, Dante Moore back, but you're reworking massive portions of that defense and your offensive line. They're going to be good. You got to go there. That's going to be tough. I get it. Ohio State should be elite at quarterback, at wide receiver. They'll be fine up front defensively, I think. I don't know what the offensive line is going to look like, but it's still Ohio State. It's on the road late in the season. It's not easy, but there are pieces to a lot of these games that we look at and say, oh, man, wow, that even still we don't know about and could go their way with how a portal guy fits in or doesn't fit in, or a new coach, new player fits into the roster that hasn't been there. There's still a lot of that on that schedule.
100%. There's a lot of that on that schedule. I'm not pushing back on that. I still think, though, there's a chance to become a very interesting team and a team that might be playing its best football in November. You know, if they can somehow survive, get there, get to November with 2 losses, maybe 1, whatever, you're going to have a chance. You're going to have a team that's probably rounding into shape.
Yeah.
I'm probably too optimistic. I understand that, but I think it's possible.
But go back to what we said about some of the change with multiple teams. Like, how wide open is that league going to be in general?
Very.
More so than it has been the last few years. Easily.
I think so. Like, look at this. This whole, all right, pencil the Buckeyes in to the Big Ten title. Dude, their schedule's a monster.
Yes.
Like, going on the road at SC is a beast. That's not easy. Like, you got Indiana on the road. Like, there's some real challenges on that schedule. And I don't know if it's possible for Indiana to be as good, but I wouldn't bet against them.
They're not going to be as good.
No,
they're not going to be.
I wouldn't bet against them though.
But there are also pieces that Ohio State team that I think it's fair to sort of look at and say, what about this? Let's discuss a few of those next when we come back right here on Jocks. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 8:50 Wednesday, February 11th, right here on Jocks. We've rolled through portal classes for multiple schools inside the SEC. Haven't really covered Missouri yet. Cody Goodwin will join us in our next segment to help us do that. What that roster may look like, what they're going to be this upcoming season. Some really nice pieces added, but do not forget about what's going to be gone from that team. That might be the bigger portion of that conversation is what has been lost. Similar to Ohio State, Greg, a lot of people, it's going to be easy to focus on what's back. Julian Sayin, great last year. Obviously, probably everybody's number one wide receiver in the country back in Jeremiah Smith. Easy to like him. You get Brandon Ennis back at wide receiver as well to offset some of that. But you do lose a couple of pieces at tight end with Max Clare. You lose C.J. Donaldson at running back. We don't ever think that's going to be a big issue. Bo Jackson going to be back. You lose, I think, one starter on the offensive line, but what that group was and then went to, I think it's fair to question kind of what we're going to get consistently. But when you lose the speed of a Sonny Styles, you lose the coverage ability of Enigma Nosen, and you lose what Caleb Downs allowed you to be defensively, series in, series out, and how he allowed you to vary the numbers in different plays. I mean, he allowed you to be a completely different defense that I'm not sure you can be anymore without him. He was that important, in my opinion. I'm anxious to see kind of what the defense looks like without a few of the pieces that are going to be gone.
Totally fair. Totally fair. And if you look at Caleb Downs, he was an eraser, right? He allowed for such versatility, and that's very hard to replicate. I wish you could. I wish it was easy. Unfortunately, it's not. It becomes increasingly difficult when you look at how most of the teams identify defenders, secondary players, linebackers. Like there's a clear delineation in how you identify certain things. Like this guy's a blitzer, this guy's this guy's that, like and blocking it up. And he just allowed for a lot of freedom and flexibility. And the way he messed with quarterbacks was very impressive. So replacing that will be very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not going to be easy. And are there other pieces of that defense that give you a lot of confidence that you look at and say, oh, yeah, I feel great about that group because now you go get James Smith from Alabama, you get Quay Russo from Alabama. So with what you had returning from your roster, like a Zion Grady, you'll add them to it. But top to bottom, do you feel like this could be a really good, I don't want to say elite defense just yet because I actually don't think that they can get to that, but a very good Ohio State defense based on their standards?
I'd be surprised if they weren't a very good defense.
Okay.
Would you be? Sometimes, though, I do feel like in the Big Ten especially, and this is not necessarily an indictment, some of your defensive numbers are going to be inflated because some of the teams you play flat out can't score.
It's fair.
And or don't really want to. Like they want to control the game. They want to control the flow. They're not trying to press the pedal. Like they want to play complementary. So sometimes your defensive numbers are inflated to the point which your top 5, top 3, top 2 defense. When in reality, if you played against teams that were actually pressing the accelerator, same conversation we had when was this? When Oklahoma played Georgia in the Rose Bowl, and Lincoln Riley said, well, if they had to play in the Big 12, they wouldn't be a top 5 defense. That's totally fair. It's not an indictment on Georgia. It says that their defensive numbers were inflated because some of the offenses that they played weren't necessarily as hard to stop as the ones that were playing in the Big 12. It's just that was 10 years ago,
Sure.
But you understand the point.
No, I don't think it's really debatable. And we went through that schedule a little bit earlier, just kind of what they're going to face, what they're going to see. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility just to talk about some of the offenses they're going to play, even their more difficult games. Now, Texas going to have a good offense next year. Illinois is not airing it out. Iowa's not airing it out. Even Indiana, with potentially really good pieces at receiver and quarterback, they're not airing it out. I mean, the most high-profile offenses they'll face would be USC, then Oregon, then Texas. Outside of those three, I mean, Nebraska, no. Northwestern, no. We just talked about Michigan and what they're going to be and probably what they want to be. So I think it's a very fair point as to what you're going to see, what you're going to be, what you're going to get if you're that Ohio State defense this year, and that'll help them some. That'll aid them to a certain extent. You can't deny it.
Yeah. Can't deny it. And that does help. But I still think if they had to win a game 13-10, That's usually how I look at it. If for whatever reason one of the games they play this year requires them to win at 13-10, can they do it? I think they can. I feel pretty confident they can do it. You see it the same way?
Yeah, I'm interested to see kind of what that offensive line looks like. Can they be as strong collectively at tight end as they have been? I think it's a fair question.
Fair. Totally fair.
Because that position has helped them a lot over the last few years.
But we thought that was going to be a problem last year, and it wasn't.
I don't think it's going to be a problem by any stretch of the imagination. But
it won't be dominant.
How good will it be for them? Sort of yet to be determined. It's going to be fun to watch.
Very.
Big Ten, a little more wide open this year than maybe some people are imagining. Some of that because of where the schedules are. Other parts of that because of the personnel that's coming with a coach or the new coach that's actually been added. So a lot more to it. And we'll shift the conversation from the Big Ten to the SEC when we come back next right here on Jocks.